So when and where did you start your career?
I started my career at Children's Aid Society in 1955.
And what drew you to the profession?
Well, I knew I didn't want to be a nurse, didn't want to be a teacher, didn't want to be a secretary. So heard about social work, didn't know what it was about, but it sounded intriguing.
And what was your primary area of practice?
I didn't really have a primary area. I was very, very fortunate to have all kinds of diverse experiences in social work. For example, I started off in childcare, and I worked with Northern Affairs, set up counseling for the Inuit living and working in the city of Ottawa. Then I did work with back to Children's Aid again, and did divorce reports for the court, and group work in a maternity home. And then I did research I was loaned to McGill for a couple years as part of a research team. And then after that, I was the director of a child abuse demonstration project. It was the Year of the Child, and the Children's Aid got some money, and we did some interesting work. And then after that, I worked as a conciliator in family court. And latterly, I was a medical social worker in surgery, primarily.
So thinking back, if you can, what was it like to practice in the years prior to social work being recognized as a professional, so before we had a college?
Well, one thing, when I came in the 50s, in 55, there were still workers from the church movement working at the Children's Aid Society. So they were the do-gooders. They did wonderful work, but they were very wary of these new, young social workers who were coming in, and who the administration thought we knew a lot more than we did. But because we had degrees, we were seen as being experts, which of course we weren't. We were just new and eager. But so there were these people still, they were probably in their 50s and 60s and still working at the Children's Aid at the time. So that was one thing. And the other thing was that there were also the caseload, for example, when you came, were very high. Like, say, in childcare, you had maybe 90 kids on a country caseload. Of course, the new workers got the country caseloads, and we had to bring out clothing twice a year, and we had to do medicals. And between moving kids into foster homes or taking them out, there wasn't time to use any of the knowledge that we had gained with our social work fancy degrees. You know, there wasn't time. There wasn't the time. You had to do what was immediate and what was the basic needs of children at that time.
Is there a social work contribution or accomplishment you're particularly proud of?
When I was looking back, it was interesting to look back on my career. And when I look back, what I was really proud of was when I was a little bit audacious and innovative. And when I was working with the Inuit, that was in 1967, I was asked to set up counseling and resources for the Inuit living and working in the city of Ottawa. There were artists, designers, interpreters, translators, and you know, nobody gave me any direction. I just had to make something up from scratch. And I remember I managed to find a bowling alley where they could meet and socialize together. And I would find a doctor who was more aware of the respiratory problems of the Inuit and aware of the mongoloid mark on their back and different things that were very essential to medically caring for these people. And so I was very proud of that work. And then my 20-hour-a-week job was transferred to Yellowknife, and somehow my husband wasn't ready to move for 20 hours a week. And I was very proud of my work with unmarried mothers because initially a friend who we were doing the work together, she said, let's do group work. And I said, we don't know anything about group work. How can we do group work? But we went and we took a course at McGill, and we began to do group work in the maternity home. And at that time, I was also working in the family planning clinic once a month because I felt it was important to know about birth control if I was working with unmarried mothers. So at some point, it was a Roman Catholic maternity home, and my friend who was Roman Catholic said, we need to tell these girls about birth control, that they need to have some choices. So the director of the maternity home was an ex-nun. And so my friend said, you're Jewish, you can ask. I can't, I'm Roman Catholic. So I went to this ex-nun and I said to her, could I bring my birth control kit to the girls and tell them about birth control and give them some choices? And she said the same as my friend. She said, we can't do it, but you can. So I did. So I was very proud of that we were able to somehow fill the needs of the girls and not upset the administration. It was with their help. And also I was very proud of the work that I did in child abuse because it was a demonstration project. It was the Year of the Child, 1976, and the Children's Aid was given a lot of money to look into new ways of working with abusing families. And the idea was the project was called Families for Families, and the idea was to teach the abusing family to reach out to the family that they were connected with when they were feeling stress. And the first thing, after I was made the director, the first thing I was told was, you'll never find healthy families who are going to work with abusing families. And that was the best thing they could say to me because it just made me angry, and I was determined to find them, and we did. We did. I thought, now, smarty, how are you going to find these families? But I plotted the child abuse cases on a map of the city of Ottawa, and I identified strong community resources in those areas. For example, the church, the school, or community resource center, or something like that. And then I phoned them and said, could you tell me who are the healthy, good families in the community? And then I phoned those families and said, you've been recommended by your priest, your principal, whatever. Would you be interested in being part of this project? And so we did that. And it went on for a couple years. The first year we designed it, the second year we implemented it, and the third year we we evaluated it. Very disappointing that it showed a lot of promise, but it was not picked up by I was hoping that the Children's Aid Societies across Ontario would pick it up and use it. But it was very interesting. 4 years later, they asked me to write an executive summary of the project because people were asking for the work, and it was a very thick volume of all the instruments we use for measuring and all the sessions that we had with the group and so on, with the abusing group, the healthy group, the healthy families. And so I did. But maybe we shouldn't even put this in, but when they told me what they were going to pay me, I doubled it. Just artificial, I just said, I thought to myself, you did this thing for the year of the child, you've got all this material, and what are you doing with it? So I thought, and you're still sending out stuff about it, and you're not willing to implement it, not willing to try it, it shows some promise. So I doubled the amount of money they were offering me to do the executive summary. And I said to my friend, the research evaluator, Rona Shafran, I said, if they take it, it's good, and if they don't take it, we'll still feel good. So they did take it, and in the end, she didn't want to do it, so I did it. I did the summary. But I felt very good about the work, because it was not easy, but it was new, it was innovative, it was challenging. It was very interesting work. I feel privileged to have been a part of it. And then in surgery, I was hired because they weren't able, at that time, the surgeons did not want social workers. They did not want to refer to social workers. The surgeons said that social workers delayed discharge, and they don't want to hear about other problems in the surgery. That, that's a different kettle of fish. They're just focused on the surgery. So I was hired specifically to start social work services in surgery. So I thought, how am I going to do this? But I decided to go to there was rounds at 7 a.m. in the morning. And I decided that I would go to these 7 a.m. rounds, medical rounds. And you can just imagine this group. The head doctor, the chief of vascular surgery, say, would be in front, then the residents, then the interns, then the nurses, physiotherapists, and I called myself the flower girl. I was at the last one. And, but eventually the doctors began to see, I could see them whispering, who is she? What is, what does a social worker? Anyways, eventually I would go along to the rounds, and they would say, this person is convalescent. And I'd say, well, there's a very good convalescent facility. Do you want me to send me a referral, and I'll arrange for her to go there, at whatever. So eventually, they asked me to present at Grand Rounds what social work was all about and how they could use social work. So I felt that was wonderful. And they actually had an appreciation day for me where they gave me a plaque. I almost brought the plaque with me. But just out of the blue, there was, just says, in appreciation, vascular surgery, and it says to me, to myself. So I felt very good about that as well.
Given what you know now, is there anything you would do differently in your career if you could do it again?
Yes, of course. I would, first of all, I would speak up more, and I'd be stronger in speaking up. I think I had to learn to find my own voice and to learn that I had something to say that was worthwhile, and that took a while. Just because the times, the 50s were very conformist and very conservative, and so we were, as social workers, we held the agency line, whatever it was, and I don't know how much questioning was done. And it was the times when you accepted, it was a patriarchal society, and kids were told, keep your emotions under your hat. Don't show your emotions. So those were things that I had to learn to do. I had to learn to speak up and speak out for individual rights.
What were some of the challenges or barriers you had to overcome? And did you have a specific ally?
I think the barrier that I had to overcome was, first of all, my own middle-class values. I had to learn, that even if a woman sold her body for sex, she could still be a a mother, a good enough mother. That was something I had to learn early, that things were not black and white. So I had to learn to open my mind and open my heart to people, and also to look at the barriers in society, because the societal mores of the time were very, very conservative, very, very rigid. So that was another thing I had to do. And my ally during those times were the younger social workers. Fran McInich, the woman I started group work in the maternity home, was much younger than myself. And the person who did research, was the research evaluator in the child abuse project, was 20 years younger than I. So I was always very fortunate to learn from the younger ones.
What words of wisdom would you like to share with today's social workers?
I think that one thing, social workers are always trying to find the right words when they're speaking to their clients. And I think what we forget is people forget the words, but they don't forget the way we made them feel. So it's very important to feel and be there with the client, and not so much the fancy words. That was one thing. The other thing that I've learned is it's very important to strategize and get around problems. I remember in 1969, the criminal code said that you could not disseminate information. This is the federal criminal code. You could not disseminate information about birth control. It was against the law. So how was I going to tell Inuit women that they had a choice about being pregnant or not pregnant? I went to the federal government and went to the people who were my boss at the time to get permission to talk about those things. And so I think that was strategizing, I think, around a problem is very important. Getting out of the box, thinking innovatively, and being a little audacious. I wish I'd been more audacious, actually. But the other thing, too, is that I wish that there were people about Saul Alinsky is a community development worker that did outstanding things in his field. I'm not hearing about the social workers that are doing outstanding things in the field right now. I'm sure they're there, and maybe I just don't know about it. But I wish that I see that OT has made great strides in developing their profession. They've moved into so many different areas, cognitive assessments and ramps and wheelchair assessments and so on. And physio too has moved, but I kind of feel, I hope I'm wrong, but I kind of feel that social work hasn't made those strides. And I look at and I ask myself, what are the underpinnings of social work? Social justice. Are we involved enough in politics? What's happening in our schools of social work? Are we taking new directions? The baby boomers are coming. There's going to be a geriatric avalanche. What are we doing? What is the thinking in social work right now? Where are we going? Do we have new ideas? How are we preparing for this? So that kind of worries me. So I throw that challenge to the social workers coming out now, and I hope that they come up with some answers and come up with some new journeys for social work.